I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. I want to welcome today on Pro Mindset Show, Jonathan Stahler. Jonathan is a sports attorney. Welcome to the show today, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Craig, over our years of getting to know each other.
Tell the audience, what does a sports attorney in your lane do?
Sure. Well, as you know very well, being in this business, there are a lot of people that will tell you or advertise that they are a sports and or entertainment attorney, but very rarely do people do it on a day-to-day basis. They may have looked at a stadium, lease agreement if somebody's trying to build a new stadium in the city, but that may be the extent of it. I take a lot of different aspects of law, and it just happens to be under the sports umbrella. All contract review, drafting, negotiating, I do all of that for my athlete clients and entertainer clients as well, other than their player contracts, because that's what they have agents like you for, and some of my clients happen to be agents. So all some sort of general contract principles are going to be applied here, but I look at certain contracts that are only in the sports realm, like endorsement type of deals or licensing type of deals. If you're looking more on the entertainment side, definitely take into account the business law aspect as well, because a lot of athletes I'm seeing now are taking into consideration their short-lived careers on or off on the field or court. So they're starting now while they're playing to start up and build sort of a side business that will hopefully be some more mainstream and full-time by the time they're done playing. So I help with business entity formations and maintenance of those all throughout the country, because I have clients in various states. So definitely got to bone up on the laws of each of those states. Copyrights and trademarks are a big part of what I do too, and a big part of being a sports attorney, which goes hand in hand with the new business ventures that these guys are getting into. And then just general civil litigation. I don't do any sort of criminal law or personal injury or immigration, but I handle all sort of civil matters. I happen to be fortunate enough to get some good litigation experience. I pride myself on solving those disputes before litigation. So, if we go to litigation, I'll be ready to go, but I try my best to resolve them through, private negotiations, mediations, arbitrations, any sort of alternative dispute resolution to get them resolved quicker. So that's me kind of in a nutshell in the sort of areas of law that I focus on for my clients.
Okay, so from a fan perspective, who's your favorite NFL team, NBA team, Major League Baseball team? We'll just stick with the big three for the moment.
Sure. I'm a diehard Eagles fan because I'm from Harrisburg, PA originally, so they're sort of our regional local team. I'm wearing my Eagles gear today because we got the big Thursday night game, so I'll be rooting for them. I have adopted the Miami Heat as my team now, being down here in South Florida for the last 6 years. Loved everything that they, and like the Eagles too, kind of are a well-respected organization that do things the right way and have a certain identity to the sort of culture they like to promote. And that's what I love. I've always been drawn to that with the Heat from afar, but now being local, they're kind of my team. And I never really had a team growing up. I followed more individual players like Allen Iverson and Carmelo Anthony. Then a Yankees fan. Dad grew up a Yankees fan. I try to defend myself as not being a typical bandwagon fan, but I did grow up, in the late 90s when they were really having their dynasty run. But my dad grew up a big Yankees fan, being from upstate Pennsylvania. He's either a Phillies fan or a Yankees fan, and he adopted the Yankees, so that got passed down to me. So fortunate enough to have had some success recently with at least one of those teams.
What's the biggest difference between working with athletes and working with non-athletes?
Yeah, great question. It's not for everybody, and it takes a certain sort of type of mindset to be able to adapt to and relate with, athletes in particular and entertainers. They are very unique individuals. They are way more creative than people me, so they think differently. So they may not respond right away when you need to get in touch with them, or check something to review to get their approval quicker than maybe the head of a CEO of his own company or a big company might. They'd be more on the ball with looking at things quicker and communicating quicker. So you have to have a lot of patience in that respect when you're dealing with athletes and entertainers. They don't, have the typical 9 to 5 schedule. They a lot of creative people like that. They're training in all hours of the night and all hours of the day. So you really have to be patient and willing to adapt when you need to get in touch with them about something if it's a pressing matter. Those are the biggest differences that I see when dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. Fortunately enough, I played sports growing up, and my sister's an actress and performer, so I've been around enough athletes and entertainers to know that going in. But that's just kind of the nature of the game, and you always have to be ready. You know this better than anybody, Craig. We don't have 9 to 5 jobs either. We may be at a nice dinner when our society's back to some sense of normalcy, and you're out to dinner and you're with friends, and all of a sudden you got to cut something short because you get a call that's not in those typical normal business hours that you have to attend to something that's got to be addressed quickly. So that's a big aspect of dealing with athletes and entertainers that's different from your typical business owner.
No doubt about it. I think that certain CPAs, attorneys, insurance people can work hand in glove with an athlete, and some it's like oil and water.
Yeah, you said it. Absolutely.
Right? Let's look at one of the hottest topics from my perspective of what's going on in the NFL today. We had Tua Tuesday on Tuesday with Coach Flores coming out and saying that, Tua was going to be the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins moving forward. And you've got a guy by the name of Ryan Fitzpatrick who's just been that, he's been that lunch pail guy that has started, I believe, for like 7 different clubs.
Yeah, he's been around the league a long time.
And he was hot. And then he comes out and does an interview with the national media saying that his heart was broken. How did that impact you, if at all?
Sure. I saw that story. Obviously, it's big news down here where I am in Miami. I felt for the guy. Like you said, he's played for over 15 years. You and I both know if you can't be known coming in and you're not projected to be a potential all-star or all-pro or MVP, the next title you want is veteran. And he has done a good job of playing a long time and earning himself a nice living when he's done playing. But I think it's encouraging that he came out and said that, because I think even just a couple of years ago, you and I would have been shocked if an athlete said that, because I think before a few years ago, athletes were very fearful of coming out about mental health sort of issues or comments like that. They would have been kind of looked down upon, or somebody would have questioned their quote-unquote toughness, or, hey, it's a business. That doesn't mean it still doesn't hurt. I mean, the guy was playing as best as he could, and, they're competing in their division at 3-3, which is, I think, probably better than some people would have predicted. I think he would have assumed that change would have been coming if he had started off, 1-5 or 2-4 with the team, but he was doing okay. So, it's encouraging that he can come out and say that without facing still facing some backlash, but not as much as in years past when athletes were afraid to kind of speak out about sort of mental health things. But it's still a tough pill to swallow. I don't think we'll see the last of him. I feel for the guy, and hopefully he'll be back on the field at some point.
Well, I think there's 2 things that come to my mind. One is that very few people on the planet have jobs where they can get fired. And everybody on the planet that pays attention to sports knows it. It's a national story. Mm-hmm. And the next day, he has to go to work and help the guy that's replacing him be the best.
With a smile on his face.
With a smile on his face. And he's got to respect and trust and drink the Kool-Aid of the head coach and the general manager that didn't believe in him, that made the change that the Dolphins made. That is a very tough pill to swallow, and I would venture to say that there's very few people that have had to face those kind of situations.
Absolutely.
So the fact that he comes out and he's real, to me, is remarkable, because the truth is it did break his heart. The truth is it sucked. The truth is he's got parents, he's got a spouse, he's got kids, he's got friends, and they're all asking him, hey, dude, what happened?
Yeah.
What could you have done better? You didn't deserve that. And the answer to all those questions is, of course he didn't. But it's a business, and the team can do whatever they want. And then the second part of that is they didn't cut him. But it brings to light the fact that there is a unilateral relationship between the players and the teams, meaning that the players have a contract that they've got to fulfill. They've got to conduct themselves in a manner that is consistent with their agreement, but the teams can pull the plug whenever they want.
Yeah, at will.
At will. So what are your thoughts about the NFL having guaranteed contracts for their players?
That's a great question. It's $1 million question if you're in this industry, specifically NFL, that's being asked and brought up a lot, especially even before the pandemic, but even now more so. One that I talked about this with a retired NFL player who played for about 9 years in the league and played at a high level in college. And remember, we talked about this very topic, and he said, at least from what he was hearing, and obviously I'm sure you have your ear to the grindstone as well, the only way that the league would agree to that is if the players gave up, their health insurance or some sort of pension retirement plan post playing career, which, again, doesn't seem fair. Why should they have to give up that if, it doesn't seem to be that way in baseball or basketball. I'm a big basketball fan too, but there's no doubt. Just look at the ratings numbers. Even during the playoffs and then including the finals, the NBA was falling second to the NFL. So there's no doubt that NFL is king, at least here in this country. So there should be some sort of way to better allocate the resources that they have so that players can have at least more guaranteed money, higher than 50% of the contract, let alone, it should be the whole lot, which, like you said, there's no other profession where that's the case, where you can sign a contract for X, but they're really only going to pay you Y and can cut you at any time. I would
like to interject something here.
Sure.
There's two things. Because they bring in 90 guys to training camp and keep 53 in most normal years, there are so many players that go home that never earn one penny from their contract.
Mm-hmm.
They're young rookies. They're street free agents. They've got an opportunity to make rookie minimum, and they don't make it. And they literally might go 9 months with a contract, sign in January, get cut in early September, and not get a penny. Is that really fair? I don't think it is, but maybe somebody thinks it's fair. And then the second part of that, if I may add, is that you bring up a good point. Maybe we should have a floor on guarantees and say
that's more realistic.
Yeah, if you're a rookie and you're drafted at a certain level or you're not drafted at all, you get X or Y % guaranteed. It's a boilerplate, collective bargaining agreement standard. And then as you get seniority in the league, you should have a higher percentage guaranteed, but not so much guaranteed that if the team has to cut you because they like somebody else better, it doesn't kill their cap, but it does reward the player for making the commitment. So the thing that I find very perplexing about how the NFL works is you have to do it on Sundays or you don't get paid. You could train all off season. You go through 14 weeks of OTAs. You could go through mini camp. You go through training camp. You could play in preseason games, get let go, and you still never receive a penny from your contract. It almost seems like there should be a stronger off-season component to their contract so that they get compensated more during the off-season. So if you're going to sign a guy, you're at least going to pay him a little bit.
I couldn't agree more, and it's just good business to at least modify the CBA in a sense where realistically they're not just going to jump the guaranteed contract, but like we're talking about here, have a floor so a guy guaranteed a minimum of something. It's good business because it creates a better relationship going forward for future CBA negotiations. So there isn't that clear divide between ownership / the league and the players, which there is at this point, and there has been, especially the last 5 to 10 years when certain athletes like a Richard Sherman are coming out and speaking out, and saying the truth and shedding light on the fact that it isn't fair. We're the only profession that has to put up with this. We don't have, like you said, and that's very true. Guys can sign a contract in January and have it in place for 9 months but not see a dime. What I've seen up close and personal is it's also the only profession where you get paid an entire year's worth of salary, aside from a couple off-season bonuses in a 17-week period, 4 months at the end of the year. So you're asking guys, a lot of guys that come from impoverished backgrounds that don't have, the financial acumen to really, balance their bank accounts and save properly, which is a whole other topic for discussion where the universities, I think, need to take more accountability and offer better education while the athletes are on campus. But you're also asking them to manage an entire, in all likelihood, 6, 7, 8-figure salary in a 17-week period. I've seen it happen too often. I know you have too, where guys they run out of money and they gotta go take out loans that are unsecured, and then they get into more debt, because they are living a lifestyle that they may not be, budgeting properly because they're not getting that paycheck every 2 weeks like most people do for the vast majority of the rest of the year. So there are a lot of things that should be changed, and we're just shedding light on a couple things that would certainly, we'd have the players support. Whether it's the ownership being on board, that remains to be seen.
Well, you have a little bit of familiarity with the football side and the basketball side. What do you see that the NBA does better that the NFL should take notice of and maybe take a page out of the NBA's collective bargaining agreement to advocate for something for the players?
I think it starts at the top, both with the PA and the league. There's no hiding if you're a sports fan that Adam Silver is a really big, proponent and supporter of the players. Some may argue even he's too pro player, but I'm sure he'd rather have that problem than people saying, the types of things, the players saying the types of things that they say about Roger Goodell. Most sports fans would say that he is very pro league and he does whatever the owners say because that's ultimately who his bosses are. But it's not even up for debate. You can't really argue that Adam Silver is always looking out for the players' best interest as well as the league. And I think it also bodes well that Michelle Roberts and the entire PA staff really, really does a great job communicating with the players and their support staff like attorneys and agents. Now, I've dealt with the PA with the NFL. They're very good too. But when Michelle Roberts came in, which was right around the time I got certified, there was a real cleaning of house. And the staff that she brought in it just have been fantastic for the years I was certified with the NPA. They were great with communication, constantly sending updates for things that really affected not only us, but our clients and the business as a whole. I just think that that's where it would start. I think there needs to be better leadership at the PA and the league level. Not necessarily saying there needs to be a change, but there needs to be better leadership and better communication. Those are the two things that I see that are really different between the two.
So, Jonathan, I want you to be a fan for a second. From a fan perspective, why do you think the NFL has higher ratings for regular season games in the first month of the season than the NBA has in their championship series and their finals?
Yeah, I know the NBA probably wasn't pleased to have that get released to the public, but I think it was evident that most people, even in a pandemic, I think the NBA was really relying on what else are people doing. They're not going to really have much competition. They can't really go out and do too much with this pandemic going on. We'll get enough people who are just going to be sitting at home watching TV and wanting sports back. So this is going to be a slam dunk, no pun intended. But it clearly wasn't, because even with restrictions, not a lot of people are sitting at home watching TV in August, which is why that's kind of a dead month anyway, definitely for football and basketball. And I think the fact that the NFL came back kind of on schedule, whereas obviously the MLB, MLS, NHL, NBA all had to kind of audible because they were in the middle of their seasons or hadn't started. But the NFL benefited from just the time, of having their schedule when it was. It brought back a sense of normalcy to our society, so to speak. And normally they would only be having to compete. The NFL would be with MLB playoffs and in the very beginning of the NBA and NHL. But even the average NBA fan will tell you he's probably not paying that much attention until the Christmas Day games or come January when NFL is really down to just the playoffs. So the NFL has clearly made it known that no matter what time of year or what's going on in the world, they will always be first based on the overall average sports fan in our country. Football is number one.
No, it is. I'm not sure why. I've got some best guesses. I think one of them is that you've only got 16 games. They all matter.
Yeah.
When you're playing 82 or 162 or whatever, they still all matter, but not as much. No,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'm going to cut you off, but I'm a big proponent of the NBA cutting their schedule. I just think it exactly what you said. They make the games worth more. They just matter more, especially even if they just cut it down to you play each other twice. I just think it would create more, home court traditions and pride and defending your home court because it's the only time you're going to play them. It's just I couldn't agree more. It makes the games more valuable.
Well, and if you also look at the playoffs, if you look at the NFL, when you get to the playoffs, I don't care if it's a wild card division, conference championship game, you win or you go home.
Yeah.
In the NBA, you can lose the first three and still win. It gets drug out so long. And most of the time, if a team's up 3-0, they're going to win the series. But it's like having these multiple 7-game series is done for TV, obviously.
Of course.
Wears the players out. They don't have the same juice every night. A lot of times you see when a team's up 3-2 going into game 6, and it's an away game, the away team gives a good college try, but they know they can come home for game 7, have home court advantage, and then close the deal. So you have this game where they're looking like they're they're just going through the motions.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it devalues the game, like you said. There's no reason that those, at least the first round, if not the first 2 rounds, shouldn't be best of 7. I'm not saying that you can't determine, it'll take less games to determine who's clearly the better team, but like you said, they'll never do it because it's too much money that they'd be giving up with the TV rights and media rights, but it'll make the game better because, like you said, the guys aren't having to get worn out in those first couple of rounds where it may be more clear that there's one team better than the other, and the performance will be that much better when it comes time for the conference finals and the finals itself.
Yeah, and if you also look at what is the most popular event in basketball at any level, what would you say?
March Madness.
And what do we do in March Madness?
We gamble, and it's win or go home.
It's win or go home.
Yeah.
It's one and done, okay? So with that being said, the NBA would be probably better suited to have the early series be like 3 games. And every game matters. You win 2, you move on. It's 1-1, and you got the game 3 tiebreaker. That's a must win, and it happens 4 games sooner than it's happening now. The guys are fresher, and they're gonna bring more juice, more energy, and it's gonna be more entertaining and more fun for the fans.
I couldn't agree more. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon, but obviously leagues have had to audible and do different things with what happened this year. So who knows? Maybe there will be some changes, but I'm not optimistic that they're gonna cut down on the number of games.
Okay, Jonathan, I want to pivot for a minute.
Sure.
At one point in time, you aspired to be an agent, and you got certified to be an agent. What was the driving force? What was your motivation for wanting to be an agent?
The $1 million question that every first year sport management type of major gets asked. And I get asked this question a lot from now getting calls from current undergrad and law students. Definitely Jerry Maguire was I'm not going to hide it. That was definitely a motivating movie. I enjoyed the movie, and you and I can laugh at some of the parts that are embellished, but we can also laugh and chuckle at the parts that are real and happen in our business. I always knew I wanted to work with athletes and entertainers. I knew I wanted to go to law school just to have that as kind of not a backup, but just to have that extra sense of credibility and help with expertise and knowledge when I'm looking to recruit clients. So I knew I see how much our society turns to sports and entertainment, in particular for me, what I deal with more so film and TV and music, in the sense of escapism, especially with what's happening this year. It's more of a reality of why people want to get away from reality. Sports and entertainment brings so much joy to all of us, and it brings people together, as cliche as that sounds. People put aside political and societal differences when it comes to sports teams because you can all root for the same team. I like to think that was a driving force for me, wanting to work with the people that bring such joy to us as a society as a whole. And how can I impact them? Well, I can help protect them legally and help maximize their profit on and off the court or on or off the field. So that's why I kind of utilize my ability to take the certain classes and get to certain experiences and internships throughout undergrad and law school to kind of get to where I am today.
What's the biggest disappointment that aspiring sports agents experience when they get out of law school, get their master's degree, whatever it may be, and they go get certified with the NBA, PA, and the NFLPA and different associations and unions? What do you sense is the biggest disappointment or the biggest myth that's busted once they become certified?
Sure. I'll give you 2. One is that a lot of this job is not sexy and glamorous like they portray it on TV and in movies. As you know, a lot of it is just a constant grind of late night, early morning calls, texts, and emails. That's it's a big part of our business and how we can. So it's not all the glitz and glamour of going on, yacht parties, with, out on in South Beach or, something along those lines that gets portrayed in entertainment. So that's number one.
Hey, hang on, Jonathan.
Sure.
You didn't spend your life at strip clubs and hanging with your clients and going on cruises and European vacations and hanging out at Disney?
Yeah, I wish. Don't get me wrong. There are moments and opportunities for it, where you go to certain events and parties that, you never would get to do if you weren't doing what you're doing. But they're few and far between. And number two is that, and I saw this more, I can't speak to football. Having been an agent in basketball, it's not a myth that there are those times where the smaller boutique agencies that I like, with the one I worked for, and then I was out on my own after that, there's a reason why those agencies don't last because of the bigger fish at the bigger agencies, because I had too often happen a couple times. We were close to signing a client, a couple guys who I watch now who are still playing well in the NBA, and I always kind of chuckle to myself now. We almost had them as a client, and it happened twice at the 11th hour when a bigger agency came in, and whether it was one of the coaches on that player's team pointing them in a somewhat forceful way into the direction of that agency because a duffel bag full of cash just all of a sudden popped up. So that happens. I certainly wasn't naive to think, oh, that's just a myth. I know that doesn't happen, but to have it happen a couple of times right in front of you, especially when you think you're going to get the client, it certainly can be disappointing. But it's a nature of the business. It doesn't always happen. I'm not saying every big agency does that, but a lot of them do, and that's why we've seen some more of that Adidas scandal that happened a couple of years ago, and more so on the basketball side, where coaches were getting paid to basically tell their players sign with this agency. So it happens. It's just a part of the business. You have to accept and kind of guide your way through it. But those are what I would say would be the two unexpected or disappointing aspects of the business.
Okay, so knowing what you know from an agent perspective and a sports attorney perspective, let's pretend for sake of discussion that you were a player coming out of college. Let's say you played LSU and you're eligible for the 2021 draft. How would you go about your business knowing what you know?
And we're talking football?
Yeah, football.
Okay. Well, you're saying in this scenario, I have the knowledge I have now, but I'm also an athlete.
You're the athlete now. You know what you
Okay.
know. You know about small firms, big firms. You know about
Gotcha.
taking money versus, hey, the fine print that, hey, you're going to have to pay it back, and
yeah,
you know the value of the combine, and et cetera, et cetera. Just run with it. What pops in your mind if you were in that position where you were an athlete?
Sure. I think it's so critical that athletes, especially when they're coming out, like in this scenario, if I'm coming out as a top, prospective first round pick, you've got to surround yourself with the right people immediately. The sooner the better. Obviously, there are the allures of a CAA or an IMG or a William Morris Endeavor for the entertainment side, or Boris for baseball. What would be more important to me is having somebody that I, trust in communication. Those, I think, are the foundations for any success relationship, whether it's marriage, a friendship, or a professional relationship. I have to be able to trust the person, know that they are a straight shooter. They're not going to sugarcoat anything and tell it to me straight. And in communication, somebody that I can get in touch with. So maybe if, the big agency has all the flash that allures me to want to sign with them, but am I really going to be able to get the guy who I'm signing with at any time or of the day or night if I have a question? That would be important to me, being able to communicate with whoever I'm working with and know that they're going to give it to me straight. I trust their advice or their expertise of what direction they're trying to point me in. So I think that's so critical, and it seems self-explanatory, but as well as I do, a lot of guys come out and they already have in place, they have a manager who's a buddy or a family member who's running their business they may have already started, or their nonprofit. And I'm not saying that those people can't do those things, because they can, but I think you will agree that it seems to be more the case that those sorts of people tend to do more harm than good. They're just not prepared or have the knowledge or skill to be running a nonprofit at full speed and full stop, or being their day-to-day manager. And maybe they do. There are successful stories, and I've seen them where it's a friend who they really trust, and they can get in touch with at any time to take care of things. But you have to be so careful with the people that you choose to to be around and be there for you. And I think it's advantageous to really, you're going through, if I'm an athlete and I'm interviewing, being the interviewee with these teams that are thinking about drafting me, I'm going to do the same sort of process when I'm interviewing people, attorneys who are going to handle my legal needs. Maybe I need to get a couple different attorneys. Maybe I need an attorney that handles only real estate issues because I want to do that on the side in the off season. So it's okay to have more than one attorney. Obviously the agents you're going to want to interview and see who you trust and can communicate with best. The same goes for a financial advisor. And, I think that is critical when it comes time to making and crafting your team. But trust and communication and surrounding yourself with the right people and right team, I think, would be critical early on.
Okay, so let's look at some of the elite athletes in the world today. You've got LeBron, you've got Tom Brady. There's probably 50 guys in the NFL and 30 guys, 20 guys in the NBA that are just uber crazy successful.
Mm-hmm.
Superstars, potential Hall of Famers. You're on the Pro Mindset podcast today. It goes without saying that I really strongly believe the mindset is the major separator. The coconut is the separator.
Mm-hmm.
What's between the ears is the difference between two guys that look the same, and one of them ends up being a Hall of Famer and one of them ends up playing in professional sports for a couple seasons.
Mm-hmm.
How do you view mindset from your shoes?
Sure. Well, there's as far as the athlete goes, once you make it to the pro level, everybody has talent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it to that point. And many are called, but few are actually chosen to play and stay at that level. Whether it's NFL or NBA or whatever other professional sport. So obviously we can nitpick as sitting on the couch and watching the games, and we can say, oh, we see a huge drop off in difference between the starter and the backup, and there are differences between the superstars and those who are on the last few guys on the roster. But at the end of the day, for the most part, everybody there has talent. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. It's what separates them mentally, their mental toughness and the drive and the focus and discipline, I think, that separates people from getting to that next level of being a future Hall of Famer and a superstar versus just being, another guy in the league that may be a statistic of lasting the average, lifespan, which is only 3 or 4 years in the league. So I think it's the same for guys who are, and women who are attorneys or agents. We're all, we obviously all have gotten to the point where we've got our law degree and passed the bar to practice law, but what separates you to be the person that they want, that you're the name that gets brought up, is say, hey, I need an attorney. Who can take care of this for me? I need a new agent. And you want to be that person. Well, what separates you is that mental toughness. For me personally, the drive and focus and discipline of, maybe not, especially while you're in law school and for an athlete, if you're in college and you're training, maybe not going out to that party or going out with your friends for dinner or drinks because you have to put in more time in the weight room or more time at the library to study. It's having that discipline that separates you from just being another attorney to being, the attorney in the area that you're in and being the guy that people call when they need something done. So discipline and focus and drive, I think, all, are the intangibles that really separate you, whether you're on the field or in the courtroom.
Okay, so let's pinpoint one athlete, and I'm going to pick on LeBron because he's the NBA champ and has done it multiple times for multiple teams.
Mm-hmm.
What separates LeBron from everyone else? He's obviously gifted physically, but now that he's roughly 35 years old, how does a guy like that continue to soar above everyone else?
Soar above everybody else and soar above all the expectations. I mean, I'm always going to say, at least to this point, that Jordan is the greatest, but LeBron is certainly making a case pretty hard for, to take that number one spot. But the thing with LeBron is I have never seen an athlete be under such a microscope and have such high, unrealistic, lofty expectations set for him before he's even able to, be the age to vote, or buy cigarettes. He'd already had that microscope under him since he was 15, 16 years old. And he has not only met those expectations, but certainly surpassed a lot of them. And I think a lot of it comes with that drive he has, between the years, like you're saying. It doesn't hurt that he has the body of Karl Malone, but, the speed of, Allen Iverson, and the strength of, of all these guys mixed together to come out with, he's a physical specimen. But that doesn't happen just naturally alone. I mean, it's known that he spends millions of dollars on his body because he knows, as he's gotten older and gotten, been in this league a long time, he needs to maintain that well. And a lot of guys, you would think it's self-explanatory. If you are a professional athlete, you need to have the mental toughness and discipline to allocate a large amount of your money to your body, because if your body isn't right, as guys get older, they may have the mental toughness and the mental awareness of to make the right play, but their body may react a second or two too late because they get older. So too often I see guys that are going by, just getting by just on physical God-given talent, and they aren't putting in that extra time training during and in the season and in the off season that really separates them when it comes to the time of the playoffs. So obviously, it was tough for me as a Heat fan to see LeBron beat my team, and I love Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, I think, embodies the Heat culture, and he's a physical specimen himself, and they're all about down here. I'm sure you heard, they do weigh-ins every day or every week, and they're all about being the best well-conditioned team. But even you could see, in the finals, Jimmy Butler's going toe-to-toe with LeBron. He really made him work. But he was exhausted in Game 5, and clearly you saw he was too gassed to really take it to that level as he did in the Game 5 win in Game 6. And LeBron, doesn't seem to be looking like he's missing a beat. So, he has the mental fortitude to focus on maintaining and investing in his body and focusing on the goal at hand. He clearly sets new goals all the time. I think guys like him and Jordan, they will find ways to self-motivate, even if it's, a quote that may have been misconstrued. They'll take it personally and they'll use that as fuel. And it's those guys that maybe, Kobe had the same Mamba mentality. They may not be the easiest person to work with, and they may not have the most friends, because not everybody's wired that way. But there's a reason that those guys achieved the success they did, because they were nuts about their craft and constantly perfecting it. So he embodies being able to make those sacrifices throughout his life to get to where he is today.
I don't think there's any question LeBron had more weight on his shoulders than any professional athlete I've ever seen, just because of expectations,
absolutely,
change in organizations, playing with a lot of other superstars. He's played in so many games. Getting to the NBA. Did he get to the conference championship like 10 years in a row or something like that?
No, it was the finals. It was like the finals 8 or 9 years in a row.
Oh, my God. So think about how many miles are on his tires.
Yeah. He's easily played at least a few more full seasons. There's no doubt.
Yeah. And so I remember, and I was in Chicago during the 90s when Michael and Pippen and all those guys were winning with the Bulls, and they would always make the allowance for Jordan, like, hey, he played in the Olympics, and he played in all these extra games. And the bottom line is, I feel like LeBron, a lot of people would probably disagree with me, and I saw Michael play live several times. I think LeBron's a better player. If I was going to play a basketball game, LeBron in his prime, Michael in his prime, and I got to play, which means they were going against each other. I say it's 2v2. It's you and I.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're picking guys. I get to pick first. I'm taking LeBron every time, because I don't care if we're betting $1 or we're betting $1 million. I'm betting on LeBron.
Yeah, and I think that debate's going to continue on for probably the rest of our lifetime. I don't know if we'll ever see somebody like either of them again, but probably didn't think that when you saw Jordan playing live up close and personal, and then his kid Kobe comes along, and then LeBron. So we never know, and hopefully there'll be some more great basketball players. But those guys are on a different stratosphere, those two in particular, just because they, and I put Kobe in that class as well. They just had a different mentality. They didn't want to just get better. They wanted to be the best. And a lot of people can say that and have that drive most of the time or some of the time, but they never wavered and never, it was not even an option if they had something else come up other than maybe, a family emergency, but they're not going out. I remember Kobe or Allen Iverson told the story. I'll tell you this briefly. He and Kobe became very close their rookie year, and Allen Iverson was the first pick of that draft, and Kobe surprisingly dropped to 13th. And they obviously both are making a lot of noise early on in their season. They, like I said, they developed a close relationship. And Allen and the Sixers were flying out to LA, so they had a game, but they must have flown in a day early. And I think Kobe picked them up from the airport. They were that close, and they're talking, they're having fun, and then it comes time for them to part ways. And Allen says to him, "Hey man, what are you doing tonight? I'm in LA. Let's go to the club." And Kobe said, "No man, I gotta go to the Staples Center. I gotta get my shots up." And Allen just said it was the epitome of, Allen was such a great player that he could be out till 4 or 5 at night and didn't take care of his body, and yet he could still drop 40 points and play at an elite level. But most people can't do that, and most people also aren't like Kobe, who are going to say at 10, 11 o'clock at night, "No man, I'm gonna head back to the gym. I got to get my shots up." So that's what separated him from his peers, and I think LeBron and Michael did the same thing.
They did. Okay, so Jonathan, you've been an agent, you're a sports attorney at the moment, you've changed organizations and employers and affiliations. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it can't be too much of an accurate predictor, because I don't think any of us predicted what happened this year and what's still going on. I also didn't think, if we had talked before and I said, "Hey, Craig, I'm going to start my own firm here in January, but I know that there's going to be a global pandemic and social unrest for the rest of the year," you'd probably say, "Jonathan, maybe it's not the best time to do that." But thankfully, knock on wood, I've been fortunate enough to be staying busy and growing my client base and continuing to practice law and learn the law and help my clients. So I'd like to continue in 5 years. In a perfect world, I'm still growing my firm. I haven't closed the door on getting certified as an agent again, but for the moment, and at least maybe in 5 years, I'd like to continue working with and for agents as clients. I think 2 other aspects that I will want to continue to grow in, and this is part of the reason why I started my firm this year and made that lifestyle change, was 2 things that interest me are writing about sports in particular and some entertainment, and teaching. I really like giving back and offering whatever advice I may have and whatever my 2 cents is worth. People who are driven and looking for advice and help and wanting to succeed. So, 2 things that I've been able to do just in this year with the pandemic happening and being on my own with my firm is, I wrote another article that I'm waiting to get word on if it'll get accepted into a journal with the American Bar Association about name, image, and likeness compensation. And then I was able to do some guest lectures at Syracuse, University, Florida State, and University of Miami, teaching sports law classes. So it's been a nice taste for me to do that now that I'm on my own, and that's what I'd like to be doing, more of like an adjunct professor, helping give back, and I would imagine I'd have some athletes in my classes if they were in the sport management type of major, and writing, and continuing to get the word out there of, in particular, the area that I really like to write about that I've been published already and want to continue to work in is student athletes and how they are, in my opinion, not taken care of and taken advantage of while they're on campus for the most part, and how that there should be more accountability at the university level with the types of things that they offer to the students, and hopefully that includes name, image, and likeness compensation being able to be paid to these athletes. So hopefully that's where I'm at when we have this podcast in 5 years and we do where are you at now?
Hey, Jonathan, thank you for being on the show today. And if there's anyone out there that has a sports issue or somebody that's in South Florida that's looking for an attorney, where can they find you?
The easiest way people can find me is either via email or on, I try to be active on Twitter and Instagram, focusing on more so Twitter on sports and entertainment news. So you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at JSESQ3. My email is jmstahler3@gmail.com.
Jonathan, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.